The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully cross all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
So I'm really excited to have John here. We haven't had anyone talk about their experience from within one of these trials, and so it's really exciting to have him here to share his story and to talk a little bit about what this work is and what it means, and he'll talk a little bit more about how he got into this and everything else and what's come out of it. And I think that's about it, but just thrilled to have you here, John, and yeah, that's it.
Can you hear me? All right. This is surreal. This painting is, my grandfather painted this in the late 50s. Wow. And this is not his normal signature. I'm not sure why the signature is custom, but it's Chief Terry Saul. He's a Choctaw Cherokee Native American from Oklahoma. He died when I was 11. Which would have been 1976. And he left a legacy of art that's just breathtaking. And so I'm just sort of, there's some of the art is still in our family, and we're kind of exploring that. And the heritage of my Native American ancestors was a little bit lax, whatever the word is. And so I'm just starting to explore that a little bit more. One aspect of the Native American culture that was present in my teenage years or growing up was peyote. So peyote buttons were around the house. My uncle taught me how to clean them, and I would pilfer them one by one until I had a nice little pile, and then go on an experience. But going on an experience when you're 13 years old, 14 years old is quite different, as we know, than when you're an adult and life happens. That said, I thought I would celebrate this with starting the talk with his painting, which is, this is a Choctaw stickball team, which is kind of like a field hockey team, only it's quite a rough game, as I understand it. And so they're doing their pre-game dance, and we have some of the game accoutrement in our families too, remaining. So tonight, the diligent intention, I titled it that, because I'm going to focus on intention. There's all sorts of focuses I could ascribe to, but it's the intention is sort of it's sort of an overused word and an underutilized action, I think. And so the word's getting weak and the action's getting less and less. So, but that said, we'll talk a little bit later about the sliding scale degradation, or the rheostat of intention. It can be everything from I don't have one yet to my life depends on this. And this talk is based on my life depending on an action that I took and some quite good luck that I had getting into the MAPS sponsored MDMA-assisted psychotherapy study in 2015. So I do want to thank Ashley and this community. This community is astonishing. It's part of my continuing therapy. It's very amazing just to see it grow, and the intellect and the heart in this community is incredible, and I'm so happy that it's happening and I can be a part of it, My contribution tonight is overwhelming. So thank you. This is another painting from my grandfather. I don't think it's dated, so we estimate it's from the mid-50s. Clearly it's an earlier piece, it's more crude. But if you look closely, you can see that it depicts a peyote ceremony. Buttons, hand on heart, hand on abdomen. And we're happy to have that. That's my great-grandmother. She's full-blood Cherokee. Northeast Oklahoma, hair to the floor. That's the only known picture of her. So,
never had a haircut.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So, anyway, it's really great to cast this up on the screen like that. When I tested my talk for time, it went long, to my utter astonishment. So, I'm going to see if I can kind of get a little streamlined. Slide, please.
What was her name?
That was Nona. Yeah, Nona. Yeah. So let's party with the truth. What are we going to talk about tonight? That's a good question. I'd like to think that there's something here. There's something here for everyone to take home tonight. But the story is how I got knocked on my ass in 2012 by a life-threatening illness. And there's the whole section that I had devoted to the precursor to that, kind of maybe how that came about. But I had to carve that out, but we'll touch on it briefly. So we're going to talk about how this, how I kind of had a heritage of a hard upbringing, you know, just a lot of dysfunction in the family, and sort of pressures that I put on myself. And I had this kind of furrowed brow, drive, you know, that is very familiar in the American culture. And I had it bad, and I still have it. However, it can be very dangerous. And so we'll talk about that, how the disease knocked me on my ass, how I was all the way down to the very bottom, you know, suicidal and everything, and how I found this study by chance and used the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy study sponsored by MAPS to crawl out of this hole and to save my life. You know, and it's still pretty close because I'm only, I think, 18 months out of my graduation from the therapy, so a year and a half. And then we'll talk about kind of some of the insights that I had. I really want to get into those. They're very interesting. I'll read some of the notes I have for myself that I would usually have on paper. Actually, up here you'll see my notes to myself, and you'll see kind of how I recovered, crawled out of the hole, and some of the things that I'm doing now as well. So the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, everybody knows, okay, MAPS is marching us through the FDA process to get this legalized for prescriptive administration, and getting very close. So PTSD is what is kind of marching this through the FDA. It's close to the heart. It's, you know, it's really what's pulling the whole thing forward. I was in a group for off-label. If you may or may not know what that is, so when it is legalized, a psychiatrist or somebody who can write sign a prescription can write this for something other than PTSD. So there's some off-label groups that are undergoing MDMA therapy, autistic adults, couples with PTSD, and I think it's just one of the couple will have PTSD, but the couple will ingest the compound and go through the whole therapy together, which is remarkable. And I was in a small group of 18 people, so lucky, man, so very lucky, that had at one time life-threatening diagnosis. Most of them were cancer patients. As far as I know, I'm the only non-cancer in there. Most of them were recovered, did through chemotherapy, and had anxiety about whether it would come back or not, and how to live life after this. But I think I was the only subject that had an ongoing disease that has no cure. And so the study ended up being kind of something about something else for me. But the group was called MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for the treatment of anxiety associated with life-threatening illness. And it was only 18 people, so I'm just so lucky. I asked Rick Dublin, I was invited to do a talk at one of their fundraisers a couple months ago, and I asked Rick if he would design a study called MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for the treatment of anxiety associated with public speaking. And I was joking. And later, one of the MAPS executives, the head of clinical trials, came up to me and said, "We're actually doing that." So the idea I would like to kind of weave through and focus on is, I'll have to check my time. Intention, given enough gravity and combined with truth and commitment, assures change. And at the end, we're going to ask some open-ended questions about this. Resolute and stubborn can save your life. Resolute and stubborn can kill you. As I talked about earlier, my upbringing, I'm a driver. I'm an athlete, and so unfortunately, the resolute and stubborn that saved my life is the same resolute and stubborn that brought me to illness. And by the end of this, hopefully you'll see maybe in your own life how some of these things can be applied and how you can maybe pan back a little bit. So I call it the furrowed brow, my heritage. Thanks. I was a wrestler, high school and college, and a few years after college even. So that's where some of the ferocity and the technique, some of this kind of thing came from. Plus, it's nostalgic for me to see these photos. So scleroderma is the disease I have. It's a autoimmune disease. It's a rheumatoid disease. It kicked me right to death's doorstep. I'm standing here. I'm 90% better. Really, no thanks to any Western medicine, astonishingly. But I'm going to really abbreviate this story so we can get into some of the more interesting stuff. I had a business up in the Bay Area, and it was getting better. It was going okay. It was very tough. I was a yacht broker. I was a yacht broker in a yacht, sailboats and powerboats. And I was house sitting for my parents up in the Oakland Hills. I was running around Lake Merritt in Oakland, and I felt like I hadn't, all of a sudden I was training for a half marathon. I hadn't run a day in my life. I felt horrible. Had heart palpitations, so I went to the weight room and they just lift some weights. Felt weak, and over a period of about 4 days, I could barely get out of bed. My forearms were numb. I woke up with numb hands. My feet were swollen. I could barely stand up. I felt like I had the flu, and I thought, man, something is really trying to take me down. This is not just something ordinary. And so, long story short, it took 4 months to diagnose this, the thing. When I finally got from a general practitioner into a rheumatology office, there were 2 rheumatologists in the room, and they looked at my hands and said, well, we hate to tell you you have something, but you really likely have scleroderma, and we'll do some blood tests. And that is a rheumatoid disease, so you're in the right office. And I said, great, I don't know what scleroderma is. And the rheumatologist looked at me and said, but you look like you've got a pretty good attitude. And I'm like, oh, shit, what is it, And I went home and looked it up, and I said, I'm screwed, You could die in 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. You could live 20 years, 25, but it's really just astoundingly painful disease, which I'll get into a little bit more and describe. And there's no cure for it. It's a miserable disease. So your cells spit out too much collagen. And so basically, that happens. You just get a lot of people get kind of seized up. My hands are 90% better, but they were kind of frozen in this position for a long time because the collagen builds up. Everything gets tight. At one point I was so covered with collagen that I couldn't stand up straight. And if the collagen starts coating or scar tissue, scar tissue starts happening in your internal organs, in your heart, your kidneys, or your lungs, you're toast. There's not much they can do about it. You can end up on getting fed by a tube, or you're dragging around an oxygen tank, all sorts of things. I have some friends that have this disease, and they are absolutely my heroes. It's unreal. It's a super painful disease. It's debilitating mentally, debilitating physically, debilitating, and it's just really hard to manage. So, I've had to be a scientist about how I manage this thing. What does it feel like? It feels like, and keep in mind I'm a lot better, but back when I was at my worst, it's like waking up with a terrible flu every single day. Like, is this ever going to end, With a stack of bad, like, red wine hangover on top of that, and just, you can't tolerate certain types of foods, and you get so fatigued that you feel like you're just bled out. Like, I'd be in the grocery store, I'd get the groceries to the car, sit down and drive home, and I just felt like I bled out. I could not move. I'd have to sleep for an hour, And we call this a spoonie. Does anyone know what a spoonie is? Nobody knows. Okay. Spoonie is a kind of a new term for people with autoimmune disease, either fibromyalgia, MS, lupus, these diseases that really make you super, super fatigued. And so an analogy was made by one of these patients that went worldwide, it went viral. It's like you start the day with a handful of spoons, and each thing you do, tie your shoes, brush your teeth, get the kids out to school, whatever you do, you're giving away a spoon, and you're hoping at the end of the day you got one spoon left for yourself to do something. And a lot of times you run out of spoons early. So I'm a spoonie, and you call anyone that you meet with an autoimmune disease, ask them if they're a spoonie. It might cheer them up a little bit. Okay, excellent. A couple of the things to add to that is that chronic pain chips away your will. I've got a very strong will. Chronic pain, if you know anyone, or if you've had it yourself, you know, it just chips away at your will, and it will take anybody, you know, all the way down. My mental toughness carried me for a time. And the mental toughness runs out, and you're like, okay, I'm not as tough as I thought, or I run out. And your spirit, or something intangible carries you along. And then you're just tapped out, you're wiped out. You said nothing left, you know. So, you know, very sobering questions come up. And then, you know, knowing how you're going to die is, and in all likelihood, that's what will kill me, but, you know, and it could kill me at any time, which is really the ferocious part about this disease, is it could rear up next year and just take me out. So, it's weird, but it's one less thing to worry about, is how I look at it. This is, I didn't put these photos of my hands in at their worst, because they're too gross. So, these are kind of some of the Raynaud's. I'm not sure if you can see them, but the circulation gets pretty bad. The collagen, you know, constricts the capillaries, so you get this neuropathic pounding like you would in advanced diabetes. And so what causes the pain also is this pounding, the blood trying to get through your capillaries, your hands and feet. And then your hands, if you're exposed to cold, get hyperreaction to cold or stress. And if you get a cut on your hand, go ahead and advance right through see, the collagen collects and your hands collect, go ahead. And then the circulation is not adequate in the fingers. And if you get a cut, it can take off. You know, and my hands are probably the last thing to come along. And I can get a cut, thank you. I can get a cut and it'll get infected. I almost lost this pinky twice this year. So I have to be super, super careful about not getting cuts in my hand. Keeping the compression gloves on, which keeps the circulation moving. And doing yoga and rigorous hand therapy. I'm spending too much time on this. This is painting I found online about 2 years ago. And when I came across it, I'm like, wow, that's what I feel like. You know, that's what scleroderma feels like right there. So if the words don't drive it home, that's what it feels like. Absolutely painful and miserable. You know, okay? Breakfast with suicide, great. So I wrote an article that was in one of the MAPS bulletins. It kind of captures this. How am I doing on time, actually?
You're ready to continue.
Oh, okay. Several months before I discovered the MAPS-sponsored study, I watched another capsule of expensive medicine skitter across the floor. It escapes under a heavy piece of furniture. I give up, I said to myself. This has become routine. My disease, systemic sclerosis, is also known as scleroderma, is all but paralyzed my fingers and made them hard as plastic. Every morning I wake, I hope to find that the last 950 days have been a bad dream, but it's never the case. I take 20 minutes to force a decision. Get out of bed. I do it. I'm skinnier than the day before. I feel like I weigh 400 pounds. I feel arthritic, stiff, feverish, like I've got the flu every day. I feel toxic, like I've bathed in pesticide. My skin crawls and burns. My feet and hands pound as blood forces through the capillaries. My heart skips and slams for a few beats, and I'm short of breath. Fatigue drags me toward the floor. My inner voice says, I can't do it, just let me sleep. I emailed 2 clients to reschedule. The office will have to stay quiet today. My business is hemorrhaging money. Oh, it's 9:45 a.m. Time for a little warm and cozy. I break the 10 milligram Percocet in half and chew it down with a glass of water. I pocket another 10 milligrams for the afternoon. 10 minutes later, I change my mind and I get ready to go to the office. Maybe I'm getting better. I'm fooled by the opiate, but it's doing its job. So went my life and my business for 3.5 years, circling the drain. I'll never feel the high of running on a trail again. I won't enjoy my body, feeling stronger after a week of weightlifting. I'll never sail my boat again. My friends have stopped the invitations or ripped me off. It's only 51 degrees outside, but I can't feel my feet. My hands are white. I can't move them. Suicide stops by for a visit. Hey man, let's go for a walk in the woods. It'll do you some good. So that was the shape I was in when I opened the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper and saw the article, Ecstasy Therapy Approved for Trial in Marin County. So the study found me. It's actually a later article, but for all intents and purposes, Don Latt is the same author. And so I called him up right away and said, hey man, I went in this trial. I was quite lucky. Who are the angels? So I found the trial, I applied, went in for an interview. My therapists are old school, just old school therapists, they were doing this back when MDMA was legal, before it was Schedule 1, you know, and they are super, super experienced. Phil Wilson is, his son died of leukemia when his son was 16, and then he wrote a book about it called Noe, a father-son song of life, love, and death. And I'm not ready to read it, but I'm almost ready to read it. I'm going to find a copy of it. It's out of print, and I'm going to read it. I'm ready now. That's Phil Wilson and Jelaine, my therapist. This is at my 1-year anniversary dinner. They took me out to dinner after my 1-year review. That's Phil Wilson. That's David Nichols. He made the MDMA that went into my stomach. It was a batch from 1986, the purest MDMA in the world. And that's Alexander Sasha Shulgin. And Sasha Shulgin and Phil Wilson were best friends. So I knew I was in good hands. Okay. Opiates, so to get into the study, I had to have a clean urine test. I had been on opiates for 3.5 years necessarily. Now opiates are getting a super bad rap, as we know. But they saved my life too. There are a lot of things that saved my life. They did the job. I was on them on the clock, 30 milligrams a day on the clock. And they enabled me to continue my life, you know, in the only way possible. You know, I mean, they're underrated in terms of mitigating pain, elevating the mood. They do what they're supposed to do, but of course you're a slave to them. And you know, when you want to figure out what the difference is between the pain from your disease and the pain from withdrawal, it's confusing. I tried to taper a couple of times, and I thought, whoa, that's going to be hard. I'm going to have to go into a clinic, get the buprenorphine or something. And when I found the study, and Phil Wilson said, buddy, to get in the study, you need to be off the opiates. I said, done. He said, here's a tapering schedule. I said, thanks. I brought the tapering schedule home. I threw it in the trash. I looked at the bottle of pills. I said, that's it. I took the last one at 9 a.m. It's 3 p.m. I put the remaining pills where I could see them in plain view. And I just stood them off. And I was on the phone with my best friend for about 4 hours that night, just going nuts. So, you know, if I can do it, I have an addictive personality too. If I can do that, anyone can do that. So, you know, it's something that you can do. If you have anyone or you know anyone that you're concerned about opiates, it's possible you can get off of them. I did it cold turkey. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. It's really, really rough. But this is when I made the decision that this study is my Hail Mary, man. This is it. I'm not going to make it, you know. And I'm going to pivot my life on this thing, you know. Thank you. So how does it roll out? You know, I visit with a therapist, I think 5 times. They get to know me. They said, John, we'll know you better than anyone in your life knows you. And by the end of the study. And so I did a lot of work, man. I wrote notes, I wrote topics, and things I needed to work out. It was just a wide open book even before the study started. And so we have these sessions, and then we have overnights. And the overnight is when you come in at 9:30 a.m. and you get your dose or your placebo. I actually was in the placebo group for the first 2 sessions, and it's all blind. So the good thing about that is that I got more time with the therapist. And the weird thing is I messed up their data a little bit, and I feel guilty about that. But they asked me after my placebo dose, after spending all day at the house, the next day, do you think you were dosed, or do you think you got the placebo? And it's blind from the doctors and the therapist, and it's blind from the patient, me. And I said, oh, 100%, I got dosed. And I've had psychedelics in my life. I said, I got dosed. And what had happened was I was still really kind of withdrawing. It was only 3 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks. I needed another week. So I was very amped, and I thought I got dosed in the MDMA, and it wasn't the case. So I was 100% sure I'd been dosed. But the way it rolls out is, so we went through those 2. I had my 2 placebo overnights. It was unblinded. I said, you check that, really? I mean, oh man, I felt like, wow, okay. Well, the good news is you get 3 more overnights and sessions in between and more time with us, which is all good. But you're assured to get the compound. I said, sign me up. This is the tripping couch. This is the room. A lot of work took place there. It's hard work, man. It's not all rainbows and bubbles. You know, there's squirrels playing outside. You know, it's just a phenomenal place. It's their house on a hill in Marin County. So it's just, I'm so lucky. Because the setting, you talk about ideal. I mean, these are some experienced people. They're angels, you know. And then the set and setting is amazing. So when you open your eyes and you go down for some time on the couch, you open your eyes, this is kind of what you see. They built a little altar by this window that looks out over Marin County, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I used to joke with them. I would say, they said, "You feel it?" I said, "No." And it was on the third session, and I was joking. I did feel it. And okay. It's been like an hour or something. I need to go to the bathroom. So I get up and wobble to the bathroom, and Phil would be like smiling, and I look in the mirror and go, "Oh, dude, you are really flying." And so you come out on this landing, and you're like 3 steps up from the living room floor, and this is what you see. It's this astonishing room, and I paused, and I just said, and Julian looked at me and said, "How's it going?" I said, "I am flying." "Okay, come down on the couch, wrap up." So the way that's the way it rolls. Is that you have a lot of homework that you've done. Topics will come flying out of your mouth when you're done, and they'll grab them and you'll address them. The most uncomfortable stuff ever, and it's not uncomfortable. You get right to it, and the insights are fascinating to me, and I think fascinating to the community at large. That's Max, the therapy dog, is no longer with us, but imagine just flying. Like, we're talking about 187.5 milligrams of David Nichols MDMA on an empty stomach in the morning, and Rick Doblin said this is the mildest psychedelic. Like, no joke, man. Like, and it's 125 and then 62.5 an hour and a half later. So that dog comes and puts his wet maw on your thigh. It's like a special occurrence. So the therapists were on the road with me, and I don't know I'm not trained, in that area, but, there's some boundaries, I'm sure. Go ahead and see what the next slide is. And the boundaries, I think, normal talk therapy are totally broken. So the therapists are in it with you. They're on the road, and I think these boundaries are blurred. And one of the hard parts about that is after the therapy is over, you're so chummy, like you're in love with therapists. And that's just what happens, and they're willing to do that. They're experienced, and it's all good. But I think that these blurring of boundaries is pretty incredible. So I don't have time, but I have choices here. Let's see. This one is different. I think that one's in writing, so I can point anyone that wants to see that piece. Lunge reverse share. Reverse share. The reverse share is a story. That's when we're talking about the boundaries. I was down on the couch, eye shades on, I chose ambient music over headphones, and the sun was beaming in the window, and I had been down for quite a long time, and it was almost time to sit up again, although you don't really have a concept of time. I opened my eyes, and Phil Wilson's sitting there in the chair, the sunlight's on his face, and he's crying. And so I sat up, I said, "Give it to me." And he proceeded, I won't tell the story exactly, but he proceeded to tell me the story about when his family is going through this hard time with his son having leukemia, traveling around the country, trying to save him, and how his son was so angry, and how they were dealing with that, and how his son eventually came to a place of gratitude. And he told me this story, and it just went all the way to my core. Like, he was sharing with me. I was holding space for him. And it's so amazing. So I don't think that's standard in talk therapy. I just don't think that happens, So that wall is broken, reversed, and it was one of the most meaningful experiences I've ever had in my life. And I had to, when I sat up, I just said, hey, I can take it, give it to me. So that's profound. So in the interest of time, I can't touch on these other ones. Let's see what's next. So acceptance. These readings that I'm giving you were not so much written by me as they wrote themselves. So one of the insights during the therapy, I titled Acceptance, and I'll just read it. About this new tool for happiness and contentment, acceptance. How do you decide which circumstances you accept and which ones do you stand your ground? Where do you let it go and where do you refuse to settle? The answer came. Acceptance and stubborn resolve coexist. Acceptance has the upper hand, and it must come first. Resolute stubbornness waits in the wings. The two are different wavelengths and live in different time zones. If you want to breathe life into the things that your will represents, you have to come to levels of acceptance of the things you think you cannot accept, including acceptance that you may not realize the objects of your will. As a consolation, one of the things you can always change is your view of things. The power to change your view of things has a profound effect on your actual circumstance. So I wrote this sort of poured out of me also. The days following the medicine, you'll experience some weight. There'll be some raw emotions. This just came flying out of my thumbs into the phone. Work with your thoughts with positive and resolute intention during this time. A lot can be accomplished here. You're cashing in on your insights, your connections, and your ideas during this time. Write down your thoughts. The medicine is not finished. Crying. The rinse, I think that's a short one to read. A lot of times I would just be driving my car, and this is after the therapy or between the second and third sessions, and I would just be overcome with overwhelming empathy for the human condition. I would start crying, and I would have to pull the car over. I mean, crying that hard. And then I'd cry it out, and I'd grab my phone, and the stuff just poured out of me. You know, it wasn't like I said, let me write something. So this is the rinse. We're almost always corked up. What miserable tension we tolerate. What happens when you reduce the stoppers of uncomfortable emotional display to the bare minimum? Sadness, the most available emotion when embracing the human condition, rises to the top, and you allow the levee to give way. What's the benefit? What's the beauty of allowing this breach? Like the tide, when it happens, it happens. There's no fight, there's no energy wasted, you are rinsed. Oh, can you go back on? How am I doing on time, guys?
You've got 20 minutes.
Okay. I can maybe get a couple of these. And so, related to crying, this is before the therapy, I was withdrawing from opiates, and one of the symptoms of withdrawing from opiates is you just cry, and you can't help it. So, I had a big day where I had to go to the bank, bank a transaction, you know, do checks, get all the decimals right, write commission checks, and I had to be perfect. And I was just miserable. I was withdrawing from opiates. So I'm in the car, it's 10 minutes before the bank closes, and I'm just crying. I put my sunglasses on, tears are just pouring out. And I go to the teller, I said, I can't remember her name at the moment. I said, I'm withdrawing from opiates, can you forgive? And she said, yeah, let's just do this, we'll get it right. And no problem, I told her I was withdrawing from opiates, and I was just raining out from underneath my glasses. And that's the first lesson about crying that I had even before the therapy started. Pull over and write, I sort of just told that. Kick it out is quite useful. It's healthy to cry, you know, and so sometimes it gets stuck. You know, sometimes you just feel anxious, angry, or something like that, and you need to do it. So I just purposely think of the saddest thing I can think about. Like I think about, it sounds weird, but I think about like a family in Syria getting torn apart, you know, or trying to, you know, something like that. Really, really sad. Because I'm already going to cry anyway, and it's stuck right here. So when it comes up to here in the throat, you know, I just get it as high as I can, and then the term I use is just kick it out. Hey, John, just kick it out. Kick it out. Just have yourself a good cry. And that's just a technique I came up with, and man, it works. The Marin Joseph story, I don't think I have time to tell, but man, I'll just tell you about that. After the therapy, I had these weird synchronicities happen over about an 8 to 10 week period, where people just sat next to me and just told me the most personal stuff you could ever imagine, right out of the blue, total stranger. Me. Do I have a sign on my back? Like, tell me your most sorrowful life problem, man. You know? I mean, this is stuff like my wife's dying of cancer right now. We just got out of, I was at a diner, at a counter, empty. The guy sits right next to me. That's kind of odd. Orders his food. My wife's dying of cancer. I just came from UCS. I said, I'm so sorry. That sucks. And I looked into the back of his eyes and I held his face for him. And he said, so unfair. We had everything going so well, you know. She's fought it twice. We thought it was over. And I'm so sorry, dude. And I'm sitting here like, I'm holding space for this guy. give it to me. And he says, well, she got out of surgery, you know, he was waiting out a traffic jam. He came into the diner to wait out the traffic. And he said, I got out of surgery today, and the doctor pulled me out in the hallway and said, well, we got the tumor. That's the good news. The bad news is there's 25 more. She's not going to make it. And so he said, man, my wife's back at the hospital right now planning a vacation to Tahoe. And I don't know how this is going to happen. You know, it can't happen. The only thing I could think of to say is, I was just out of the therapy, I said, you know, just when you see her, just bring some joy into the room. Anxiety is the unwelcome guest in that room right now. That's the only thing I can tell you. And I'm so sorry, man, that sucks so bad. And it was profound. And then right in front of my eyes, he went from tense and kind of in this fighting mode to, he slumped in his chair, and he said, she's gonna die. She's gonna die. I just said, dude, I'm so sorry. And like people in the restaurant, it was an intense conversation about it. And I would not break eye contact with him. I just held that space. And I'm not experienced at doing that, but I did it. And so that's one story of like 5 stories that happened in like 8 weeks, one after the other, and I'm like, what is going on? It's so weird. There's no statistical formula to ever describe how that could possibly happen. And I'm like, whoa, that was an intense conversation. Wow. And the guy said, hey, I feel a lot better after chatting that up. Thank you. Shook my hand, said, my name's Steve, said, my name's John. Thanks, man. And I went out to my car and said, whoa, that was heavy. And then I just burst down into tears. I cried so hard, like I never have before. And that was just one of like 3 or 4 stories to see this life. The click. If I could boil down my benefit from the therapy, one benefit I did not read because I didn't have time to read it was, I'll just do it off the top of my head if I can find it. Let's see. Okay, so I wrote this down between sessions, and I brought it into the therapist. Throughout the day, 18 years of whatever lacked in my upbringing was gently placed into my heart. Then over the next 72 hours, it catalyzed there right where it belongs. And then I brought that the next couple of days, my next session into Julian, and I said, is that overly dramatic? Like, am I a drama king? That sounds overly dramatic. And she said, no, that's routine, and that's good that you wrote that. And so the other thing that can boil down my benefit from the therapy is something clicks in your brain. It becomes crystal clear that the stakes are this. Death after a fear-laden and desperate struggle for something ill-defined and unattainable, or death after a life well-lived and having touched the lives of others. And that just boils it down. And so, that's what it boils down to. I have a certain amount of time left. I don't know if the disease is going to kill me next year, 2 years, 5 years. Is it comfortable? I'm managing it. It's really hard to manage, but I'll be damned if my life is going to be not enjoyable and not meaningful. So that's kind of just something that wrote itself, and that's something I decided. Let's see what's next. Okay. I feel like I've left some things out, but we're getting right to it. A matter of survival. Here's some tools outside of the psychedelic therapy that I use to get better. And I started putting this together before the therapy, during the therapy, then it really accelerated after that. Music, and really underestimated power. If you can really just up your ante with your relationship with music and use it more, it's so powerful, you know. It's astonishing. A meditation, actually do it. Yoga, get very good. My life depends on this stuff. You gotta say that it's a matter of survival. I have to do this stuff. For the myofascial tissue, I have to keep it stretching or I will stiffen up. So yoga, really deep into it. Exercise, you know, I'm running half marathons again, which is remarkable. Nutrition, I'm always experimenting. You can really dial it in. Sleep hygiene, I call it Satan's final exam, sleep hygiene, because it's the hardest one for me. I have something called a self-diagnosed delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. I stay up later and later and later with no problem. I read, my brain turns on at 10 p.m. And then I go through a cycle where I eventually just skip a night of sleep. I have like a 36-hour circadian rhythm. So life happens in the morning though, you know, and that's when the good stuff, the workouts happen. So I'm always trying to reel that in. So sleep hygiene, mirror work. You know, as suicidal, just look at yourself in the mirror. You know, if you're, it's mirror work. Look at yourself and talk. Next one. Human interaction. Get out of the house. Get with people. That's why this community is so amazing. You know, human touch. Get it. Make friends with your body. You know, say hello to your body. Pat yourself down. You know, make friends with your body. Make peace with your body. My body betrayed me. You know, I have an autoimmune disease. It's trying to kill itself, and I'm trying to, hey, buddy, you know, let's work together. Psychedelic local community. Mentioned that. Volunteer. Do something to help someone. Be there for someone. Get a certification, take a class, you know. I got certified to teach aerial yoga, and now I'm studying for personal trainer certification, which I always wanted. I've wanted for years and years. I'm finally doing it. Next. Get right to the truth in every matter, gently, not like a drill sergeant, right? Which is what I used to do. So that's the voice in your head, making friends, make it a friendly voice. Continuing education, psychedelics done well. Okay, a lot of people ask me, are you continuing with psychedelic, you know, self-inspection? Damn right, you know, and do it well, because it works, you know, and don't go too fast. And do your research. Find your gut. Start listening to the gut in your heart instead of the voice in your head, you know. Find your stoke. I'm going to start surfing again. You know, I have a hyperreaction to the cold, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think I can actually reset my cold trigger point by getting in and out of the ocean. But find something that stokes you, because doing a job or doing anything that you're just ambivalent about can kill you. I'm living proof that it can kill you, or it can try to kill you. So find your stoke. Exfoliation, not specific to me, but it's nice, I think, for everybody. Exfoliate your entire body. That gets rid of the collagen, you know, so I have to keep loose, exfoliate. Cryotherapy is new. I haven't tried it yet. It's on the list. I'm doing it. That's when you get into a really super, super cold chamber. And I'm going to try to reset my trigger point for cold reaction. Micro choices is something I made up. When the going's hard and you get overwhelmed, like the next choice is just too big, make a little tiny choice. Like, hey, I can see my mood kind of spiraling, and I felt it happen like 1 minute ago. You know, I'm going to make this little micro choice, like, hey, I noticed that, and fuck you. I'm not going to go there. And so it's just these little tiny choices that you can make that are attainable. It's like a click on a ratchet. My friend says, be the ratchet. Click, 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 one click at a time. Praying pictures and feelings. This is something I made up also. I'm sure I didn't make it up. I'm sure it's been done for thousands of years. But what I do is, I was religious prior to my being ill. I wouldn't call myself religious anymore. And I stopped praying for 4 years while I've been going through this. But I started to pray again, and all I do is I don't pray to a long white beard up in the clouds at all. I just pray. And I do it in pictures and feelings. No words allowed. Don't picture a word, don't say a word, don't hear a word. You picture an image, and you feel the feeling, and you hold it, and then you move on. It's a good technique. I'll let you know how it goes. What else do we have? Internal, okay. I used to say this right off the top of my head. So, you know, what the therapy did for me by and large is when you get your internal house in order, it's something easier said than done. You learn to entertain only the truth in your thoughts. You learn the medicinal value of crying. You learn to tap into this gigantic pool of empathy that's there, you know, to balance the loneliness and the fear and the anger of the human condition. You do that, your life changes for the better. And that's what I'm still working on. So my involvement in the study was absolutely the pivotal event where I got in touch with this. And the study, I reclaimed my life. No joke. The study got me to wake up, pause, and tap into love and courage. I'm running again to do half marathons, teach yoga. I started a nonprofit company in answer to a calling I got, which was up on the screen. I didn't have time to talk about it, but I got a calling during the therapy to help others who've been knocked on their ass, just like I was. And I'm just going to do my best to carry that out. Oh, that's my yoga swing. That's me inverted. And these are the two entities that I'm trying to kind of get out of the ditch and get moving forward. I've come quite a long ways, but it's time to start the fire animals a little bit. And I think that, with that, that's it. Oh, no, I forgot. Intention at the beginning. Let's wrap it up. Let's ask these open-ended questions. How can we harness an intention? How can we bring more truth to our intention? How can we bring more commitment? It's okay to not know your intention. Sometimes we'll do a group and integration circle and we'll have intentions, and I have the urge to just, if I don't have one, I just make one up. But it's okay not to have one and just wait for it to come, you know? Questions like, when do we change our career? When do we install a meditation practice? When do we redefine a relationship? When do we dive deep inside? And when do we make friends with our body? And that, for sure, is the end.
Wow. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Oh, I'll just go ahead and tell you, that's a slide I carved out, but that's a magazine cover that I used to keep me going when got rough. We have a special treat, and this is so super mind-blowing. Ben Malcolm is going to play some live music for us, and it's going to blow your mind.
Questions. Q&A.
Oh, questions. Sorry. People have questions, ask me. I'm game.
Would you mind sharing more, if you feel comfortable, of course, regarding the specific issues that you felt like when you worked through them in the therapy work, conducive to your healing process? Stuff that perhaps pertains specifically to your illness, or is it more emotional issues from the past, or both?
Okay, so the question is, as I understand it, what issues were germane to the therapy itself, like emotional, the illness itself. So that's a good question. I'll try to make it short. It was both. I was worried about the disease getting into my lungs, because one of the things it can do is it can cause fibrosis in your lungs, and then you're on a breathing apparatus, and then you're dust. So the other thing that can happen is your esophagus can go bad. You can get acid reflux so badly that you aspirate acid at night. I have to tilt my bed up. If you aspirate too much stomach acid, your lungs get fried also, and then you're dust. So I was concerned about the disease getting in my lungs, and I was on the couch just flying and getting these deep, clear breaths. I remember just this air was coming through that crack in the window, and I felt so oxygenated. And Jelaine put her hand on my chest and said, "Notice your breathing. Hear how deep it is, how clear it is." And I think she went out on a limb here. She said the disease has not touched your lungs. And man, so much stress left my body. At that moment, it was just astounding. So, aside from the disease, yes, emotional issues, relationship issues, we went all the way to the root of those. And that's kind of what's missing from the reading that I skipped. And the area, the overlap between, I couldn't tell the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. I could not tell the difference. Emotional pain felt like physical pain. And so we worked on all of it, and I did a lot of homework. And so relationship issues, I ended up closing my business, which was actually starting to do better, but it was killing me. So and the therapist said, "John, don't make any major decisions, like, take it easy." I'm like, "No, man, I'm just going to axe the business. I'm going to move to Southern California. This is the Bay Area, where it's warmer, I'll feel better. And then redefine this relationship I'm in." And it went down the list. I'm going to do it right, starting now. And I did it as fast as I possibly could, and it took a long time to get all that stuff worked out, and it's still getting worked out. But yeah, emotional issues, fear, that was just a little note I made on my homework, fear. And Jelaine grabbed it and said, "Oh, we were talking about something else." And she said, "What about fear?" Boom. That turned out to be the theme of the day. How do you illuminate fear, shine a light on it, walk right into it with open arms, just march right into it. That's a new approach for me, because I'm used to combating everything. Does that answer the question a little bit? Okay. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, you've been using other plant medicines or herbs or traditional medicines as part of your ongoing protocol?
Edible cannabis and very, I mean, 10 milligrams and less. Edible cannabis mitigates my pain. I'm off opiates, so I still deal with a lot of pain, and it does a good job in very small doses. Psilocybin, and so as far as plant medicines, that's it for now. I mean, you know, there's a list there, and I'm gonna
You use the cannabis just in very small doses for pain?
Yes, and it works. Yeah.
Because I can talk to you about.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Had you used MDMA before the study?
That's the cool thing. I had not.
Okay.
I had not. You know, I had some psilocybin and some mescaline experiences as a teenager. I had a little marijuana industry at the age of 12 and 13. But
the question I'm looking
yeah.
for is what's the difference in your experience of working with a plant medicine like that on your own and working with it in a guided setting?
I haven't worked with it in a guided setting yet, only alone. And so I'm looking forward to that. And MDMA was my first guided anything. But it's been, yeah, I've experimented with LSD and psilocybin, and very carefully, and made sure everything was perfect. I did violate James Fadiman's rule of not having a sitter. Fortunately, it went well, and everything that needed to happen happened. And that's another talk. Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and insofar as it's going to be therapeutic, I will keep pursuing that. And when it stops being therapeutic, I will stop. Yeah? Any other questions?
Yeah, this one.
Yes?
When you said you addressed several pains during the therapy, was there any kind of childhood pain or parental kind of experience or trauma involved?
Yes, you know, I thought...
And if so, do you think that had maybe a reason or an origin for your disease? I know it's far-fetched, but do you think that your trauma from your childhood may have brought on the disease itself?
Okay, I hear you. So the question is childhood experiences and childhood trauma, for example, possibly one of the backgrounds of me getting desperately ill? The answer is yes, absolutely.
Oh.
And I thought I would come out of the therapy with a peachy keen relationship with my family, who had circled up, and we built a scaffolding of support, as you should do when either you or family or loved one gets ill. You should build this team, scaffolding and support. And that was one of the hardest things for me, was to accept support from a source that I was ambivalent about. And it's still a tough thing for this day. So there's a lot of resentment that I'm working through still. And the scaffolding and support is still available, but as I get better, and there's a whole other talk, but as you get better, you start kicking the legs out from under this table of support. And getting better is very hard, because you learn how to be an ill person. And then when you start getting better, you start having to, again, like I said, take apart the scaffolding, which is very hard. And yes, there were childhood issues. My parents were only 20 when they had me. And I keep hearing, oh, but they did the best they could, I'm sure. And did they? Maybe not. You know, maybe not. So I have to come to terms with that. And they're great people, and I love them. But I'm still working through some of that stuff, and I would never have even gotten to that point without this therapy. No way. And we went way back to that stuff. We got all the way deep on that stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm excited. Any other questions? Oh, one more.
Yeah, one more. Do you know if the MDMA you took, was it based on the sassafras tree roots, or was it a synthetic version?
I don't know. All I know is that David Nichols made it at Purdue University in 1986.
Oh,
and
86.
Yeah. So that maybe answers your question right there.
The original sassafras tree.
Original batch. Yep. So I'm excited. Ben Malcolm is here. He has...
We've got a couple of announcements before he...
Announcements? Okay. So I'll just hand it off to you.
Ben, you can do that too.
Ben is awesome, you guys. I just met this guy a few months ago. The guy is so killer. Oh my God. Thank you, guys.
you so much, John. It was really both touching and informative. So thank you.
This is dedicated to John and his incredible talk and his incredible journey, and to every person that has experienced pain or trauma in one way or another and had the courage and willpower to go and seek whatever it is in the world that they need to find to begin, complete whatever they need to on their healing journey and healing path. It's also dedicated to my baby. I'm having a real baby, like for real. So there might be another registry at the next event.